Hey everybody, welcome. This is another Sick to Fit thingy, our regular Tuesday, an hour early, with me and the Mergoddess, Sarah Bofinger. Hello.
Woohoo! Hello, how are you today?
Hanging in. As I just mentioned, I'm very sleepy because I did a sleep study last night because I have had obstructive sleep apnea for many years, and
Mm.
I got the shit scared out of me by the Schurzeyes, Team Schurzey, who are both neurologists, and they have an Alzheimer's prevention program, and they were reminding me that the risk of Alzheimer's goes way the hell up when you have sleep apnea.
Mm.
And so I decided to, take it seriously.
Yeah, definitely. So what did you discover when you
I
were doing this thing?
Well, I discovered that I don't sleep very well with cannulae and probes up my nostrils. So I haven't gotten the results yet. Uh,
Okay.
but I will say that when you walk into a lab and they see a bald head, they are so happy. They don't have to deal with, they have to like glue all these different, like there were 12 or 15 different thingies and, probes or sensors or electrodes that go on your head. And for someone like you, they'd have to like part the hair and
Really?
glue it
Yeah.
down. And they looked at me and was like, yeah, give us this bowling ball.
They just knew where to put all the things at.
Yeah, yeah. He was like marking it with a marker and then sticking stuff on. It was
Oh
great.
wow. And I saw that you had shared with someone about sleeping with your mouth taped. Like had you tried that before? I had never heard of it before.
Yeah, I keep tape right here, in fact. So if I'm not going to be
Oh.
talking, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, so it's like yoga breathing. No no mouth.
It just reminds me to use my nose. Because
Ah.
apparently over the last 400 years, human faces have changed a great deal. We've essentially receded here. Our mouths and our noses specifically are smaller. Our mouths are smaller, so everybody's got like bad teeth because there's not enough room for the teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's some people think it's because we started like cooking our food and having soft foods and pre-made foods and breads, and instead of like chewing hard on like roots and bark and very fiberful foods and even dried meat and tough stuff like that.
Oh
So
wow.
I'm working on getting an interview with the author of this book called Breath: The New Science of a Lost Art, saying that basically the way we breathe matters a great deal to our health.
Hmm.
So
Wow,
yeah,
that's fascinating.
so
I
a
was like, I
little.
had never heard of that. Luckily, I can fall asleep in no time. I have naps. I get much sleep. It has never been a thing for me, thank goodness.
Right. Well,
Because,
you also probably practice breathing when you're swimming,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and then recently, doing the running, I actually, when I was running, I was holding my breath a lot more.
Mm.
So I had relearn to do that, on land. And then with yoga too, it's so important. Like even like I've done studies for myself where I've really investigated my breathing even when I'm swimming, because there's can be times when you just like hold your breath like and you're not even conscious of it, which could
Mm.
be what's happening even when you're not sleeping, right? Like it could just be an unconscious behavior that you've just done over and over, and now it's like, okay, we're no, we don't know this part, so let's look into it and see how we can dive deep into it, right?
Yeah, and strangely enough, the most important thing doesn't seem to be are you holding your breath or not, but are you conscious of what you're doing or not? So,
Mm-hmm.
like taking short breaths, holding our breath unconsciously is not good for us. And there's all these different practices from around the world that have conscious, intentional breath holds. and intentional sipping air instead of taking in huge amounts of it. And so occasionally I will run with this on. And of course
Oh.
I go much slower because right? So, because I
Yeah.
can't do that. I have, right? So I can feel that the challenge of breath when I'm exerting myself, and as long as I'm doing it consciously, it has a whole different effect on the nervous system and on all the other systems that are involved in respiration.
Yeah, and that just reminded me of one of my teammates on the US para team, he actually put water in his mouth, duct taped it, and ran a 5K. Yeah. I guess he was practicing that, that nose breath. I mean, that just sounded awful.
Yeah.
That does not sound like something I would want to do. But I was like, okay, that's really great.
Yeah. Yeah. Make sure you don't trip.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you could choke. I mean, there could be a bunch of things that
You, you
go on.
could be a water balloon.
Yeah. Pop.
So that's my end. What's new with you?
What's new with me? So I've been doing a lot of inner work. So I haven't like necessarily left my house. I mean, I haven't really been leaving my house, but I've been doing more like just really tuning into who I really am. And I've gotten to swim and all those fun things, but I'm starting to look at the bigger picture here about who I am. At the core, and what is it that I can do to help humanity understand this as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been doing, like yesterday I did a video I posted on Sick to Fit about kindness, and how kindness, when you start to actually look at everything in your life and just like sprinkle a seed of kindness, like it can actually create ripple effects, and we can actually start visualizing a world that is based on the principle of kindness. And so I've been imagining like what that looks like in a workplace, right? Where a workplace is like their sole purpose is kindness for all their employees and everyone that they're helping, and that's
Mm.
like their foundation. And so that like kind of brings with that, and then just all of our systems, right? Our educational system, our government systems, like when we look at financial systems, like when we look at all the systems, and we can find this kindness as this like better ground, we can start to look at a better world and a more united one, and so that's what I've been like focusing on. So I've been trying to, as I interpret all these things, trying to give, little messages that won't be too overwhelming, but it'll be just little smidgets that we can take in and start integrating in our bodies right now, as we're looking at the outside world may not look kind right now, but
Mm-hmm.
we can start like embodying it and practicing it ourselves. And then we can start seeing the ripple effects down the line, as years to come. Because I definitely see there's a lot of exciting things going to be happening, and so if I continue to help spread that message, it'll be really, really great.
Yeah, yeah. And I can't remember if we talked last week before or after my interview with Marta Zaraska, who wrote this book, Growing Young, about how our health is determined much more by our mental attitude and our social connections than by the food we eat and our exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, a third of the book is essentially about kindness and altruism.
Oh, wow.
And solely like just from a scientific lens as to how being altruistic and kind will help you live longer.
Yeah, like have you ever seen like the study where they like put water, in a jar, and they like, say kind things and kind words to it, and then like something happens to the water, and then you do another experiment where it's like negativity, and like the water doesn't really look, or it turns a certain way, or whatever. I don't know exactly what the study is, but I
Yeah.
remember, hearing about it.
Yeah,
And
it's a great metaphor. Unfortunately, the study, the the scientist who did the study, like totally cherry picked. Like if he had the thing that they were loving, he would take all these pictures and pick the pretty one, and if it was the thing they were hating, so it's not. I mean, it's a beautiful metaphor, and
yeah.
it's but but we don't need to go. Like we don't have to figure out the cellular mechanism to
Hmm.
understand. Like if I give you $20 and I say go spend this on yourself, and I give somebody else $20 and I say go spend this on somebody else, that person will report being happier than you will.
Hmm.
Right? You think,
Yeah.
oh, 20, I can get whatever I want. It turns out that helping others actually makes us way happier.
Yeah, well, and then like last week, how my birthday wish was to kind of give joy and, excitement for everyone else. And I ended up having like an amazing day, but I didn't necessarily focus it on me. It was more about just continuing to bring that joy into others' worlds, and that's kind of like what it does, right? It's not, and when we look at it from a bigger picture, it's not about us, but we end up benefiting from it, right?
Right. Well, if we are everyone and everyone is us,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
there's a lot more leverage in helping others, right? Because there's a lot more of them than there are of me.
exactly. And you
So
get all that energy by, just having that, the energy give receive kind of like coming back to you naturally without even you thinking about what you need to do. Or and that was what was so beautiful about the kindness thing. Is like kindness doesn't ask for anything. Like you can be kind and that's enough, like you could just smile at someone and you don't say like, are you going to smile at me back, like you don't demand anything from it. It's just a natural reaction that can be created and beautiful.
yeah, I had this experience last week. I was driving home. It was a really hot day because it's like in the 90s and hundreds here in North Carolina right now. And there was a guy with a sign, panhandling by the side of the road at a left turn I make. And I opened my window and I looked. I had like $2 in my wallet. So I went and he was thankful for it. And he says, "Hey, do you have any water?" Because he was out there. It was really hot, and like I'm sorry, I don't have water. And I like as soon as I drove off, I'm like, someone asks you for water, you got to give them water. So I,
Yeah.
so I went like a quarter mile to the drugstore, bought 2 bottles of water, and then came around. And I realized as I was driving back, I was playing out these fantasies of how grateful he was going to be. Right? Like, what a hero I was. Like, boy, I hope somebody's filming this. I hope this goes in my karma greatest hits,
Yeah.
And realizing, like, what if he's like, not impressed at all? What if he doesn't, what if he's like, I don't like that brand of water or, right, whatever. And, like it really, like, it was just like 30 seconds to get back to him. But during that time, I was really struck by the how some part of me really wanted to be a hero. Like,
Mhm.
and that doesn't take away from the kindness, from the impulse.
Yes.
But in fact, it helped me kind of work on myself to realize like how many strings are attached to me, right? Like
Yeah.
I have this image of myself. I'm a good guy, and the image is so often based on getting that reflected back to me. So
Mhm.
what do you do when you don't feel kind? And right when you don't feel kind to others, you don't feel kind to yourself. You accidentally open the newspaper and you're like, fuck everybody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for myself, like I just try to like be there with that, and just understand that if that's how I'm feeling today, that's how I'm feeling today. And not every day is going to be one of those days, but I can be aware of what's happening. I can journal. I can know that I can still like cuz basically what happens, right, is like we've been programmed, right? So whatever our past and present and future, whatever like we've been encountering, we like have these habits that we do like all the time, right? Whether we
Right.
watch the news or not, or whatever it is, right? And so then, like, once we start to kind of learn about ourselves and things like that, like, we start to want to unprogram these certain behaviors, you know? So, like, for myself, I've been noticing patterns of when I want to be unkind to myself. And instead of judging myself like I would have before, now I am just taking it and saying, okay, here's a pattern. And I'm writing it down actually in my journal so that I can go back and look and say, oh, here was a day that I wasn't really feeling this, but I allowed myself to be this. And,
Hmm.
you know, and went from that. And even just like what you said about attachments, right? Like they're already there. So if we can like try and just learn from them and just say, okay, I'm in this moment. There is nothing else but this moment. But like our mind wants to say, oh, like even for me, like, you know, I'm like, oh, I want to go back to swimming 9 swims a week, but it's like it's hard to get to a pool, right? And so then my mind is constantly like, I need, in order for me to be this thing, I need to go here, right? And then it's like, okay, like so I allow myself these ideas, right? But then I also like just go back inward and say, okay, like what is this about? Oh, this is a program that I've been running and now I'm ready to let it go. And so, okay, we'll just allow it to run. And next time, maybe I'll catch myself in a different moment and then I can release that time as well, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, there was a couple of weeks ago. I was feeling really low and down and not very generous and not very happy. And I came out in the backyard and I saw Mia coming in from the garden, and she was like really happy. Like she'd been, harvesting things, things had come up, and like the last thing in the world I wanted to be around was somebody else who was happy.
Yeah.
Right. And so I could imagine myself, I mean, I could remember how I've acted in the past in that like some sort of little coldness or cutting remark or constriction. And instead I just felt into it and I said, Mia, I'm in a really shitty mood right now. It has nothing to do with you. I just want you to know that. And the first thing was like she was all relieved and like, oh, cool, like good for you. Do what you need to do. And
Yeah.
second, as soon as I said it, I could feel like the sting of tears. Like it wasn't anger, it was something else. It was like lack of connection, it was sadness, it was like, the whole world. And as soon as I just owned it and was honest out loud, it kind of started melting away. Like I felt like
Yeah.
this is like a hard thing inside me. I'm gonna have to chip away. And just naming it kind of melted it and it began to flow.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great way because we're all like all the things that are happening on the outside world, like we're all a part of it, right? Because we're all one. And so essentially, like anything that's going on that we're seeing, we are having to break down in our body so that we can alchemize all of the energy that we've been dealing with so that we can be on a new plane, you know, on a new earth where like the things that maybe we were used to before are no longer a thing anymore, right? Like maybe there's a time when like we've already done all this and then like we don't have to be like upset because we know that like, oh, it's great, you know? Like maybe there is a time that we will get to that, you know, in a world where all of us are just feeling really great and we've already done all of our work, you know? And maybe there's not, right? There's like so many like different realities that could play out, but for you to feel it and allow it to kind of come to the surface and then see what it's doing in your body is a really great way to release it, you know, and allow that to not be a pattern anymore, you know.
Yeah, I'm reading a book called A Liberated Mind by Stephen Hayes, who was one of the co-creators of ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy. And
Hmm.
his point, the first thing you got to do, if he talks about like psychological rigidity, like holding on to the past, holding on to fixed thoughts instead of being able to be present in the moment, is the big cause of suffering. And he says, like, the first thing you got to do is what he calls diffusion, like defuse yourself from the narrative. Like the narrative,
Hmm.
it's almost like he says you're like watching a movie, and you're really caught up in the movie, like to the point where you think it's real. And then in the bottom right, there's another video playing, picture in picture, and that picture is the screenwriter typing the lines. It's like, remember, there's always a screenwriter, and the screenwriter is your mind. And you can enjoy what your mind does, but don't start believing it. Right? Don't start mistaking it for reality. The screenwriter is more real than what's on the screen.
Exactly. Yeah, and I even look at like even what we're seeing now, like of course like if you're in the midst of it it can feel really real, right? But if we look at it from another perspective, it could be just a manifestation of all of our minds that now we're looking at it on the outside. You know what I mean? Everything that's come to a head.
Meaning, like, when we feel like separate from the world, like I have to protect myself from this horrible thing that's going on. It's like, well, where in me are these same currents? And where, if I shift them in myself and it starts rippling out through kindness, as you said, like maybe that's the revolution.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's more that's going to be coming up to a surface. And if we look at it as like, okay, it's, you know, we haven't seen it because it's been in the shadow or it's been in the darkness. But now that we're shedding this kindness, we're shedding this light, we're allowing it to come to a head. Just like when we work on ourselves, right? When we allow ourselves to feel that emotion, now we can like melt it, like you said, you know, like now I just felt like I just kind of allowed that to just fold in, you know, I didn't feel a certain way anymore. And that can actually be the same effect that we have on what's going on, you know, now. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Anything to add?
I think that's a good place to stop.
I agree. Well, thank you as always. I
Beautiful.
see Laura was commenting. Hello, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
One day we will do things in person again.
Exactly, we will. We'll all be having a party.
Right on. All right. Well, in the
Cool.
meantime, enjoy your personal party.
I will indeed.
I'll talk to you later.
You too. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.